Hello and welcome to this episode of Neural Flow, where I'll be showing you the right way to deploy infrastructure as code using Azure Verified Modules and GitHub Copilot. My name is Dan Scott Rainsford. I am a solution architect at Microsoft focusing on data and AI. And I spend my spare time writing as much code as possible, and I'm hoping that I can share some of my learnings and how I am reimagining my engineering process with you so that you can make use of the tools in a way that I am. So today I'm going to deploy this Blazor web app to Azure. The first thing I'm going to need to do is create some infrastructure as code. Now I'm using Bicep to do this, but I could just as easily use Terraform or whatever other method I want, but Bicep is my choice. And I'm going to use something called Azure Verified Modules. Now these are the best practice modules provided by Microsoft and Microsoft engineering teams that provide all of the functionality for deploying various services in the best practices way with the right security, aligning to Microsoft's well-architected framework, all combined in modules that get stored in a registry that you can reference in your Bicep file. Same works with Terraform, but we're going to use Bicep. So in this case, I've got a Blazor app. It's basic. It's pretty much the starter app. There is nothing to it. In fact, it actually doesn't matter because I'm not really going to deploy this. All I want to do is create the infrastructure. So all I really need is a web app. So nothing advanced. Of course, in a real scenario, I'd need a lot more than that. I would have, app servers, app settings, storage, databases, and so on. But I'm going to keep it simple. So I've got my application. Next thing I'm going to need to do is build the Bicep. Now, I, of course, am going to jump straight into GitHub Copilot by clicking the GitHub Copilot button, which I've got here. Now, of course, I do have the GitHub Copilot and GitHub Copilot chat extensions installed. And I also have the GitHub Copilot for Azure extension, which provides me with a little bit of other functionality in GitHub Copilot specific to Azure. So I have got my Copilot, you got to edit with Copilot. This is my Copilot chat window up. And before we get straight into prompting, notice I've got three modes: ask, agent, and edit. And if you're not familiar with these, the ask mode allows you to ask questions about your code base or about best practices or documentation. Just generally ask technical questions about that will be grounded on some of the tools that you might have access to and your code base. Edit mode is a more controlled edit experience, which will allow Copilot to edit a subset of files that you define and identify to achieve a single task in a single round. Agent mode is the most powerful mode and allows Copilot to act as an agent, calling tools, testing the output of each change and reevaluating about whether it needs to make a fix or make an improvement or call another tool. Agent mode is extremely powerful, and it is where we spend most of our time now. So, before we move on, we're going to quickly talk about configuring tools. By default, you get a number of built-in tools. Now, these allow agents to do things like edit your files, search files, find files, run Jupyter Notebooks, execute tests, run commands in the terminal, all the things that it would generally need to do to build and test and run an application. You also get a whole lot of other tools that might be provided by your extensions. Now, I've got the GitHub Copilot Azure extension because that provides me with a couple of great tools that my agent can use, such as, code generation best practices. There's also .NET best practices. There's Terraform best practices. There's a whole lot of functionality which my agent might choose to use to solve my problem. Doesn't have to, but it might. And of course, some other stuff here. And we can add additional tools via extensions or via MCP servers. What I will do quickly before I get into this is add one further tool. Now, if I click on add more tools, it gives me the option of adding an MCP server. Now I'm going to add the Microsoft Learn MCP server. Now this is an MCP server provided by Microsoft, which allows your agent to search the Microsoft docs, which is extremely useful if you're building anything or using any technology with that is provided by Microsoft. Now, when I click that button, let me do that again. Add more tools, add an MCP server. I will select HTTP, and the URL I want to use is that, and it's https://learn.microsoft.com/API/MCP, and we'll press enter, and we'll give it the server ID. I will just call this Microsoft docs.mcp. And I can either make it available to all repos I use globally, e.g. all workspaces, or I can make it available in this workspace. I want to make it available just in this workspace. So it will put it into my repository into an MCP folder. Now I can add additional MCPs. You can see down here I've got this button here, the add server button. I can add more MCPs. There are lots of useful ones there, but always be careful when adding MCPs that you trust the source, you trust what it does, because it is running inside your environment and your agents will call it. So I've got my MCP server. Now I also want to enable that MCP server. So if we look down here, we should see there's our MCP server, Microsoft Docs Search. It only provides one tool, Microsoft Docs Search, but that's good enough for us and it's automatically enabled. That's fantastic. So, right, we're ready to go. We're ready to build. We're ready to build our infrastructure as code. So, we're going to run this command. We're going to say to Copilot, create Bicep to deploy an Azure web app, to host my Blazor app, and put it in the infra folder and call it main.bicep. And make sure you use Azure verified modules. Cool. So, by the way, we could have used voice chat for that, but we are going to pre-write it. So it's going to do a number of things. It's going to potentially look at what tools it can call. It's decided it's going to call the CodeGen best practices. Great. It's actually looking that up. Really useful. And this is all about grounding the prompt. And there we go. We've already got our Bicep already created for us. That was pretty quick. And we'll close that MCP. So there's our Bicep. Oh, and it said, I would like to run the Microsoft Docs search to ask Azure Verified Module Bicep for web app official module name and usage. Cool. It's decided it needs to look up the usage for Azure Verified modules. Now I can continue and allow either in this session, so it will allow this query for this session, or in the workspace, so it will always allow this query or queries like it, or I can always allow. I'm just going to say allow in this workspace so that if it does any more searches, it won't have to ask me. So as you can see, it's gone off and actually figured out where to find the Azure Verified modules. That's pretty cool. It's going and fetching websites for us now, and it's grounding itself on all of that knowledge, which is so important to get the right answer when you're using a Copilot in GitHub. Because it all comes down to grounding. Now this is what we call implicit grounding. It's just going and figuring stuff out. What I will show you is how to explicitly ground or provide explicit instructions via a custom chat mode so that it will always get it right. Now, it has done the work and it has done it well, but it is wrong. If you have a look here, the main looks good. Yep, it's created some custom modules, but the web app module, this is the URL, or this is the specialized resource provider telling Bicep where to get the AVM module from, and this is actually getting it from the Microsoft Container Registry, but it's asked for version 1.00. Now, if I go and have a look at what versions are available for website, which is the resource we were looking at, it's 0.16.0. So that is wrong. So it's done a great job, but it has hallucinated a version. And this is our job, is to get rid of that problem. And we also assume that all of these parameters are correct and they actually match up to what is available in the documentation for the module. Because if we go through, click on the module, we get to see that there is a whole lot of documentation and examples and amazing work here done by Buddy Davies and the other team of engineers that work on this, where we can see all the examples of what patterns we might need to apply, what do the parameters look like. You can see it's quite extensive. And in this case, it's gone pretty much just done, had a good guess, and it's probably wrong. So we're going to start again. I'm going to click the undo button over here, which gets rid of all of the current changes because they're all wrong. And I'm going to delete the files. Gone. But what we're going to do is we're going to go and create ourselves a new chat mode. So as you can see, we've got ask, agent, and edit. We can create a custom chat mode. And in that chat mode, we ground all of the information that we need to actually work with AVM. So we're going to use this configure chat button, which we could, there are other ways to do this. There is another folder you can create, but if we're going to go and create a mode, and let's just say create a new custom chat mode, and we're going to create it. We can again create in our .github/chat modes in our repo, which will mean that that chat mode stays with our repo. I love this. This is my preferred method, but you know, perhaps you might want to have a specific mode just for you that you keep in your user data folder. For example, a challenge me or a mentor mode, or a mode that isn't specifically technical, maybe helps you iterate or ideate over problems. A whole lot of opportunities and possibilities open up with chat modes. So we're going to go and select that, and we're going to call this AVM bicep. And it will go and create us this AVM bicep.chat mode in that folder in our repo. And it looks like this. It has a description of the chat mode, and it allows us to select the tools that we want. Now, I've already created this, and I will show you through it because I spent a fair amount of time crafting it. Let's get rid of this. So if we look at what this says, the first thing is create, update, review Azure infrastructure as code in Bicep using Azure Verified modules. I've specifically allowed it to use various tools. I've also told it to use the Azure Get Schema for Bicep, the Azure Get Deployment Best Practices, and the Microsoft Docs MCP. I've also allowed it to use Playwright, but we won't talk about that. But I've spent a lot of time defining the instructions. So I always start with a heading around what is the mode instructions. You're in Azure Verified Bicep mode. Your task is to create, update, or review Azure infrastructure as code in Bicep using AVM. But in there, I've given it exact instructions on how it is to look up things like, how do you get the latest version? Well, you actually use the fetch tool, which is a web fetch tool, to get the latest version of the AVM module from Microsoft Container Registry. For example, for the module, that module there, which is going to create a virtual machine, you can actually find this at the Bicep AVM res compute virtual machine. So you can do that mapping, and you can go and find the appropriate version tag. And once you've done that, you can find the documentation on the GitHub repo for AVM. We give it instructions on using Microsoft Docs, or give it instructions on you can use those tools, and we get really clear about what we want this mode to always do. And that way we don't have to bother grounding it or telling it or explaining to it how to do things. So now that we've got our mode, we should be able to create a new chat. And now we've got AVM Bicep down here in custom. So We're going to select that, and we're going to ask our prompt again, create the bicep, blah, 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 blah. Exact same prompt. Make sure you use Azure Verified Modules. But this time, it's going to have all of that additional grounding information in our chat mode available to it. So this is going to go through, and you will start seeing that it will look up, automatically start looking at the version numbers, which is gone and done with the tags list. It is now going through checking all the version numbers, and then it'll start now GitHub. This resource here is looking up the documentation, because as I mentioned, you want it to know the correct parameters that are actually available. So if we now, it's now still working, but we can start seeing what it's done. As you can see, it's already got 0.41 is correct. Now it has got a skew issue there, which we're hoping it will go and refix as it works. That so now that's gone. So it has also got the correct version for our web app, 0.160. So that's great. And it will continue to work through that. It also ensures that the minimum AVM, minimum parameter set, the required parameters, are also set in the right way, because these are not the same format as you'd expect in the web, in a particular web app, because they're combined down. So can you add log analytics and app insights to this? So again, I don't have to tell it. It's going to use AVM. It's going to go ahead and probably add a new entry into the main. It's probably going to add a monitoring.bicep. If I wanted to be more specific here, I could be, but I haven't had to tell it use AVM, and it's gone and done it the correct way. Now I could have, of course, had a bit more of a discussion about this. Perhaps asking if I should have could improve the security on this. So this is where additional custom chat modes might come in. So I'm going to create a new chat mode. Now that I've got this, okay, yes, I'm happy with that. That looks pretty good. I'm a junior engineer, junior SRE, creating the platform infrastructure. Great, that saved me a bunch of time. No squigglies, it's all the right versions, all the latest versions. But I'm going to add a new chat mode. So I can go down here now and actually go configure modes, and I'm going to create a new custom chat mode, create it in that folder, and I'm going to call it Mentor. Now this mode is less about creating code and more about challenging my assumptions. So I've pre-created this, and all of these are available on my reference website that you can grab all my different chat modes, prompt files, and other resources, and customize them and use them however you want to. But in this case, I've got a mentor mode, helping engineers by providing guidance and support. There are less tools to change files. It's all about just looking at the files in the repository. But you're in mentor mode. Your task is to provide guidance, support the engineer to find the right solution as they work on new feature or refactor existing code. So we have a whole bunch of guidance on what you actually do. So now I've got this new mentor mode. I'm going to say, I'm going to switch to mentor mode. Still in the same context, still in the same chat, but I'm going to say, what is this a secure application? Now, of course, GitHub Copilot Chat Agent Mode will quite happily answer those sorts of questions. But Mentor Mode is designed to start asking you questions and challenge you back. Or do you want to, so it has given us some guidance, some recommendations, and we can now say, I want to know if I add a database with user accounts in it that uses, will it be secure? So as you can see, it's come back with a number of different recommendations, but also followed up with a question about would I like to explore any further of these? I'd like to explore the use of private endpoints in my code. So it's going to make some comments, discussion, make some recommendations, next steps. This is where I might start to use one of my prompt files to generate a specification or make some recommendations or create some GitHub issues. But I'm going to switch back to AVM bicep mode, and I'm going to use my voice mode. And I've decided, I think virtual network integration is really important with private endpoints. I think that's the way I want to that my mentor has instructed me or guided me to go. So let's try this. Hey, yeah, I would like to implement private endpoints and put everything inside a virtual network as the recommendations were made. Can you go and update the bicep to do that? So again, because I've switched back to AVM bicep mode, it automatically knows it is going to need a virtual network. It is going to need private endpoints. It's already looking those versions up to make sure, number one, the versions are available or what the latest version is, but also where the documentation is. So it'll start to go and process that. And as you can see, it's already turning off public access. As you can see, it's referenced the virtual network subnet that will have been created up here. So here's our virtual network. And all of that is no squiggles as it's gone and added those private links. This is the great advantage with AVM, as normally we would need 3 or 4 resources to do this private endpoint. That's all combined into a single resource. So we're done. We're now inside a virtual network. We got no squigglies. Everything looks pretty good. We didn't have to continuously tell it and remind it and educate it on AVM because we grounded the entire conversation in with our custom chat mode. Now, some of you may have used Copilot instructions, which is another feature inside GitHub Copilot. Now, Copilot instructions allows you to give instructions to the overall repo on how to behave when using or implementing certain features. Now, that feature would have been one way of providing all that guidance. The problem is we only want to provide this guidance when we're working on specific features. So Copilot instructions may have been not quite the right fit. But I will share with you one last early feature, which is auto update instructions. Now, this new feature will allow GitHub Copilot to automatically generate the Copilot instructions markdown file for your repository automatically by looking at all the stuff in your repository, looking at files that may have been generated by other products such as Cursor, etc., and accumulating all of those and bringing them in and making them compatible with GitHub Copilot. It also looks at things like your README and what other files might be found in there. And as you can see, it's looking at Claude Code and Windsurf rules. It brings all of that together and it will write a Copilot instructions file in our GitHub folder in a moment. And that will then help customize that behavior. But as I said, that doesn't replace these custom modes because they really help you ground in what you're doing rather than the whole repository or in specific file types. So we'll wait for this. It's, as you can see, it's working through our entire repository, even looking the fact that there's C# code in here, and it will create a Copilot instructions, which is relevant to this. I have my own personal Copilot instructions I include in many of my products. You probably will have too. I usually start with that and then use this this new feature of auto update instructions to really customize it to this particular application or repo. Right, we're pretty much done, but as I mentioned, all of my custom chat modes, custom prompt files, my MCP server setup, my Copilot instructions is all available to you in a open source repo that I encourage you, please go and have a look at. And if it's useful to you, please feel free to share your custom chat modes or prompts or Copilot instructions or anything else that's useful to you. This is something I would love to continue to build up and learn from others, as everyone has their own way of working with things. The QR code is there if you happen to be on a phone when you're watching this. Otherwise, I will share this in the YouTube description of this video when I upload it shortly. So heading back over here, let's see if our auto instructions should have been created. So this is what our Copilot instructions looks like. Based on, interestingly, it's actually read through our chat mode and used the references and documentation for that. So it's done a fairly good job. You want to keep these up to date every now and then as your project or solution evolves. So with that, I will thank you all for watching my video and hopefully getting to the end. And of course, the obligatory like and subscribe if this was helpful to you. And if you'd like to see how else I use GitHub Copilot to reimagine my engineering practices, we've only just scraped the surface, and I am planning a whole lot of follow-ups around spec file generation, plan file generation, and rethinking how large changes are made to more complex systems and moving away from just dealing with infrastructure as code. So thank you again for watching. Have a great day and a great week, and I look forward to seeing what you're all doing.